Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. I never thought I would be able to speak of this from personal experience. But man, being stabbed in the back hurts like a mother trucker. Especially when it comes from family members and people you consider to be in union with you, thinking like you, wanting good things for you, or at least not going out of their way to damage your life. That's just what I always perceived family to be for, and I was clearly wrong, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that damaged my life most, and you'll be the judge of that. My family is a very non-authoritarian one. We lived in harmony, granted each other the space and liberty to make mistakes, and learn from them, and we learned and taught each other how to accept and live with each other's flaws and imperfections with love and patience. And although I would like to think that this explains away my reaction to my wife's complaints about my family throughout relationship, I know that many of you are probably going to see through the range and potential for toxic behavior that this blind trust of mine could cover up. This family of mine, which I was once so absolutely proud to be a part of, and could never shut up about gassing up and complimenting, had always pretended to be unconditionally fond of my then girlfriend and now wife. That wasn't really out of the ordinary because my family was always supportive of my relationships and even stayed close to some of my exes whose relationships with me ended peacefully. I feel like I'm just building this up to insinuate that I was wrong in something, like trusting my family over my wife, because you need to understand how genuinely tight-knit we've always been and how healthy my relationship with all of them made me make the decision to not spark fights with them or fuss around about their somewhat discriminatory jokes against me and my wife at gatherings or reunions. Even now that I'm writing this, I can still sense that no matter what I say, I'm wording it so horribly, which I guess could mean that I'm the a-hole in the situation regardless of how I choose to say it. The thing about my family is that even though they're not authoritarian, nor do they force any of their political or religious or ideological beliefs on the people around them, not us, their children, and neither the rest of their families or friends. My grandparents are kind of like that, and my dad got it from them, and then my mom and dad raised me and my siblings on the same grounds of liberty. Do whatever you want as long as you're being responsible and able to handle the consequences of whatever your actions lead you to it. And it's not like this was lazy parenting because they made sure to be included and aware of everything in our lives, but just only intervened when it felt like our safety or well-being was to be harmed or jeopardized. In a sense, that makes it so bittersweet and what made our relationship so strong and let us stay close even after we all got married and took our own routes in life. We still gathered at my parents' home almost on a weekly basis to dine together or discuss whatever family problem or drama has taken place in recent times and then part ways peacefully like we always did. I felt like that's enough emphasis on how much I valued and loved the relationship I had with my family because my interpretation of the gravity of what they did to my pregnant wife, which led her to leave me, was bad enough to make me never ever talk to them ever again, even though I really do value them immensely, except for my dad, who I can still call every so often, but we're not as close nor do we talk how we used to in the past. Over the past few months, my wife grew less and less fond of spending time with my family, which I understandably took to heart at first. We were all so close and they seemed so reciprocate, liking each other in front of me. I had many reasons to believe she was just exaggerating when they told me that they gain up on her and she feels cornered and attacked whenever she expresses her opinion. I know that my family can get loud in conversations, but that's not to attack or corner anyone. It's just the way they are. That was at first, and then apparently, things evolved into her telling me that they were straight up targeting and excluding her from their conversations. I literally never ever witnessed that happening, and whenever my wife and I brought up the topic, she would get super defensive and accuse me of siding with them against her as well. Now, looking back at things, I'm sure I dismissed things because I had no reason to do otherwise, only worsened what she was feeling at the time. It sparked many arguments in our relationship, and as time progressed and this became a source of problems whenever it was brought up, my wife and I's presence at my parents' house became a rare occurrence. Even then, My parents and siblings asked me if things were okay between us and called to invite us whenever they gathered. At one point, we decided that if she didn't want to be around my family for her own reasons, that shouldn't derail me from having a good relationship with them, and that if I wanted to hang out with them for a couple of weeks every week, it shouldn't be a reason for us to fight. It stopped me from being salty and hurt, and her from having to go through the inconvenience of visiting them. She was being really rude to me whenever I got back from my parents' home, throwing around stingy little insults that were either directed towards them or even me. I was sick and tired of this being a problem for us, but I also didn't want to stir up muddy water, so I would just bite my tongue and let her talk shit all she wanted. Even up to the point of my wife leaving me, I was still convinced that I was in the right and she was in the wrong. The last time I had seen her was when my family and I organized one of our infamous trips to our cabin a couple of towns up north. My mother was insisting that I bring my wife with me, but I knew that it would only bring us problems if I talked to her and tried to convince her to come. She had grown so cold towards my family at that point that I wouldn't bother suggesting she comes with us. My mother insisted and even showed up to my house without telling or calling me. The house was in a bad shape because neither me nor my wife had been around to clean it. She walked in and I could see my wife's brain being mushed as she ran around trying to clean up as discreetly and calmly as possible. My mother told her to sit down and talk to me face to face like a civil human being for the love of God. You can clearly guess the rest. My wife lost her shit. The reason she was so flustered wasn't because she wasn't civil, and my mother knew that. Yet, she still just said it to cause tension and offend her or something. That was certainly the first time I experienced what my wife had been telling me all about all those months ago. I just wish it hadn't been, though regardless of how wrong that sounds. Following that day, I went with my family to the cabin, and we spent a couple of days there. My wife and I seemingly sorted through the situation that happened with my mother. She knew it wasn't my doing and not my fault, so we didn't even fight about it. Although now, I'm looking back at it, she probably had enough with my family and didn't want the baby that she was now pregnant with growing up like that. Might I add, when I left to go with my family, I wasn't even aware of her pregnancy. She simply didn't tell me. I heard about her pregnancy when I got home from that trip and found a note on our hallway empty room. She told me that she wanted the hell away from whatever twisted mentality I had grown up with and didn't want to raise a baby while fearing for him or her every day. My mother came back the following day after I had left and hailed hell on her, telling her she's unworthy of a lot of things and basically officially kicking her from our family. My wife didn't want to raise the kids fearing that they would be excluded like she was, simply because they didn't believe that pineapples belong on pizza or that milk should be poured before cereal. This is obviously as diluted as I can make it because the actual intensity of the situation left me sobbing on my couch for days. I had no way of contacting her and I could only sit and hope she would come back. I know there were a lot of things that I did here that I shouldn't have, and I would admit to so much more than that if she just was here. But it has been more than 6 weeks and I haven't spoken a single word to anyone in my family and don't intend to do so anytime soon or ever. Update. Some of you guys told me that she could be lying about the situation as the only time I had actually seen anyone treat her horribly seemed explainable to some of you. No. Some of you also asked why I still talk to my dad. And the reason for that is that he too got into a huge fight with everyone when my wife left. He stayed with me for a few days to teach my mom a lesson for what she did. He's a witness to some of those incidents, but when we got the whole picture, he was really ashamed and disappointed and apologized profusely and told me he'd be more than happy to apologize to my wife in person should she come back. I know this now, but my wife is not a liar. I wish I had come across this realization sooner because it cost me the most beautiful thing in my life, and I would do anything to have it back. Next story. My father wanted to be a great artist. He won tons of awards when he was a student, but after graduation, struggled a lot to become successful. It was hard for him, and he left when I was a toddler. By left, I mean he stopped coming home or seeing me or paying for anything. We still lived in the same town. Pretty soon my mother got a divorce and he still never really was around. I saw him maybe 4 times a year sporadically, and I mean saw literally. Most of the time, it wasn't even a conversation, just like a school performance or something, and he might be in the audience. When I was younger, this was really upsetting, and I kept trying to contact him and invite him to things. Eventually, I just stopped, and I would hear stuff about him through the grapevine. I think he left town at one point. Anyway, my father has recently started teaching an art class, and to be honest, it really hurts to see and hear other students talk about what a great mentor he is when he never had any time for me. I felt, I don't know if it was curious or anger or something else, but started taking the art elective at school because I wanted to confront the thing that was so much more important to him than me. Not sure if this is relevant, but my art teacher and dad never got along and competed for the same scholarships when they were younger. Well, recently he tried to approach me and talk about how he was a fool not to realize he could do art and be a father. But I just brushed him off and told him I was getting late for class. Well, he showed up again after school when I was talking to Mrs. B, art teacher, and got really upset that I was learning art from someone else. I lost it and told him that he lost his chance to teach me art and be a father when he abandoned me 15 years ago. I don't feel this was too harsh, but a lot of people have been telling me this was too far since he's trying now. Edit. Honestly, I would really like to be closer with him, but I feel like he's just going to leave me and I don't want to go through that again. Not the a-hole. He's never given you a proper apology. I never realized I could do art and be a father isn't an apology. If he said something along the lines of, I'm sorry, I made a stupid decision 15 years ago, and I regret not being in your life, that would have been better. Instead, it sounds like he wants to be in your life on his terms, so I fully get it. What does trying mean? Has he directly and sincerely apologized without an expectation of anything in return? Has he done something tangible to attempt to make up for the damage he caused? To me, it sounds like he has made one half-hearted apology attempt and then immediately criticized you for moving on without him. I'm a fairly forgiving person, so I would probably have given him a bigger opening than you did, but he hasn't really signaled that he's sorry for what he did to you. Mostly, it sounds like he just regrets the consequences of his choice, which is not the same thing. Not the a-hole. He has no right to expect that you wouldn't find a mentor or teacher, so your response to him was perfectly appropriate. If he starts actually trying, you may want to give him a chance, but that will be your choice. Next story. Me, 26 male, and my girlfriend Madison, 27 female. Her parents, her sister, husband, and her younger brother all met up for dinner. Me and Madison have been together 3 years, so I know these people very well. Their family is very traditional and outgoing. They really enjoy roasting each other and have a very open family in terms of what they talk about. So, her sister was bringing up her love of meal prepping and cooking for her husband, and how much she loved working from home because she could cook so much more for them. She also said that working from home has given her the chance to do more chores around the house, so her husband didn't have to worry as much when he came home. Madison's mom then asked if Madison ever cooked for us. We live together and I basically do everything. I cook, I do all the cleaning, most of the laundry, and shopping. Madison takes the trash out. I sort of laughed and said, no, not really. Madison said to her mom, he's kidding. I cook every now and then. I looked at her and said, no, you don't. You've literally never cooked as a single meal. Some of her family started cracking up, so I thought it was fine. It's the truth. I've been with Madison for 3 years and she's never cooked a single thing for us. I don't care, I'm not with her for her cooking, but I didn't feel like lying to her parents either. Madison's mom was disappointed. I looked at Madison and asked me how I did it because she knows I work long hours. I said that we DoorDash a lot because whenever I come home late, I don't always feel like cooking, that I always make us breakfast before we go to work and pack lunches, and that we probably DoorDash 3 to 4 times a week, all of which is true. Madison and her mom gave each other looks and we went back to eating. On the way home, Madison was being standoffish, so I asked what was wrong. And she went on this whole rant about how I didn't need to expose her in front of her family. I said, I didn't realize I said anything that was a secret. She kept going on and on about how just because her sister likes being a housewife doesn't mean she needs to be one. I said, if the truth being told to her parents was such a problem for her, then she knows where the pans are and she can start cooking if she has a problem with people knowing she doesn't. My parents think I didn't say anything wrong, but my sister thinks I might be an a-hole. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You told the truth. If she's embarrassed by not cooking, it seems like there is a deeper problem she needs to address. She's right. It's okay not to be a housewife, and it sounds like you aren't asking for that. So why is she upset by people knowing that? Her issue is really with her family's judgment and expectations. She's projecting this onto you because it's probably easier to blame you than to confront the real issue. Well, it's always nice for you to have your girlfriend's back in situations like this. She was telegraphing that she doesn't want you to share that about her by saying she cooks every now and then, and you ignored that and told them. My guess is that the issue is less about the cooking and more about feeling like you've got her back, you know? Maybe if you tried talking to her about it that way, like, I should have had your back, I'm sorry about that, it would help get the issue out on the table. My guess is that she doesn't feel all that stung about cooking. Not the a-hole. Next story. I, 51 male, have a daughter, 18 female, and my wife, 56 female, has a daughter, 23 female. Both of our daughters are from previous relationships. My daughter has been consistently pulling her hair out and sometimes will eat it. It has become serious as I've noticed a few bald spots. I bought her a few hats that she picked out and some wigs. When my wife and I first got together, our daughters did not get along. My stepdaughter would bully my daughter and make the household filled with tension. Stepdaughter moved out when she turned 18. Stepdaughter came home to visit and saw my daughter wearing a wig. She started to make comments and even posted pictures on social media. I told her to delete the pictures and asked her to leave. Stepdaughter is enraged in getting married in spring. She asked wife if she could borrow money for the wedding. Wife asked me and I told her no. Stepdaughter has made it clear that my daughter will not be receiving an invitation. I told my stepdaughter that I'm sorry but will not be helping with the wedding. She is angry with my decision and their wedding date might have to be moved. She added that we will not be invited unless we help. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my stepdaughter's wedding? Not the a-hole. On top of the bullying, your stepdaughter said daughter won't be invited and then asked for wedding money? Even if she hadn't asked you for money or bullied your daughter, that would be reason enough to skip her wedding and refuse to pay for it. She can ask her mother and birth father and their relatives for money. I hope your wife and daughter have a good relationship at least. Not the a-hole. She's 23 and needs to take responsibility for herself, and that includes financially. She's not entitled to your money. She's using invitations to her wedding to manipulate and bully, which she sounds like a bully in general, into doing what she wants. Do not give in or it will never stop. It doesn't sound like a wedding you'll want to attend anyway with her entitled attitude. FYI, she'll do this with seeing her potential future children too.